Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the importance of play and the link between sensory integration and speech and language development. I've got my very brilliant colleague here, Lara Osman, to join me. And basically, we were doing a joint assessment recently. And Lara, I loved your descriptions and explanations of the link between sensory development and speech. And yeah, I thought maybe other people would be interested to hear from you as well. So I'll introduce myself, and then Lara, I'll let you introduce yourself as well. I'm Louisa.
Great.
I'm a children's occupational therapist. I'm also a sensory integration advanced practitioner, and I'm a SOS feeding therapist as well. And I used to be a teacher. So Lara, you've got most of those qualifications and more as well, I think.
So I'm Laura, and I'm a speech and language therapist. Louisa and we completed our advanced sensory integration training together. And same as Louisa, I've completed my SOS feeding and also a qualified teacher. I've actually been teaching most recently in a preschool for children with special educational needs.
Nice.
And I suppose just quickly about like the role of a speech and language therapist, I guess, if that will be useful. So as a speech and language therapist, I look at obviously the speech sounds that we make to form words. I look at the language that we use in order to communicate with other people. And I look at how individuals understand language. So following instructions, for example, and understanding the meaning of words. And we also look at social communication. So that's how language, body language, and the understanding of social situations impacts upon communication as well. So that might be things such as knowing that we communicate differently with different people, so between friends and teachers, knowing about staying on a topic that's important, reading other people's body language to know whether they want to communicate with us, how they're feeling, kind of understanding of emotions and interpreting other people's experiences. So that's also quite a big part. So it's speech, language, and communication, I think, is probably a better way to describe the role of a speech and language therapist.
Oh, that's really nice. Thanks, Lara. I feel like I just learned a little bit about speech and language therapy as well. So maybe I should say what an occupational therapist does as well. So occupational therapists work with children to help them be as independent as possible in their daily activities. So we look at, what another child of their age will be doing, and if they're able to dress themselves or go to the toilet by themselves or feed themselves or play with friends or go play on a sports team or do anything that's meaningful in their life. And we try to help children, be as independent as possible in those meaningful activities. So the reason why Abdul qualified as a sensory integration therapist is there is obviously, as we're going to talk today about the link between sensory integration and speech and language, there's also a link between sensory integration and our ability to participate in all our daily activities. So when there's dysfunction in the sensory systems, we see people's participation in their daily activities being disrupted. So we work on those underlying sensory improvements in order to improve the ability for a child to function in their daily activities. So that's my link.
And for children, their kind of number one occupation is play, right?
Yeah. So that's why we love to talk about play. I'm aware there's a little bit of a delay sometimes, and our internet connection seems to be being a bit funny. So if everyone will just be patient with the technology, we're going with it anyway. So let's talk about play, Lara. And just a little disclaimer for everyone. This is meant to be just pure kind of educational information, as helpful as it can be for parents or therapists or anyone that works with children and is interested in play and sensory and speech. But it's not meant to be medical advice. We haven't assessed your children, and just meant to be an educational video for everyone. So Lara, if we're talking about play, how should we define it? What do you think?
I would say that it was a spontaneous and joyful activity in which, like, children have the opportunity to experience and experiment and orientate themselves to the world around them. So that's how I would define it. And it's through those experiences that learning can happen, that learning and development happens.
Yeah. I liked the idea I heard in the Classy lecture we were talking about that we both saw on play, that they talked about play has an element of control, so the child is in control and they're kind of, I don't know, I thought that was a nice kind of element to think about with play, that the child kind of being in charge.
Yes, definitely. And I think that, that's about play and enables a child to be in charge, and it enables them to find the things that they're motivated by. And with learning and development, the bigger the emotional response from an activity or an experience, the more meaningful it is, and the more likely that learning will happen, because it's firing up those neural networks. Kind of the bigger the emotional response, the more motivating, the more fun they're having, the higher the chance of learning.
Yeah, so the next thing we're going to talk about that leads really nicely into that is we're going to talk about why play is so important for learning and development, and basically what do we think parents and a therapist or teachers or anyone that's watching us needs to understand about play. But I think, you kind of partially just talked a little bit about that.
I think it's that learning is basically like the adaptations that our brain is making in response to experiences, and play provides that within a meaningful context for the child, because, like you said, it's meaningful and it's child-led and they're doing something spontaneously, so they're actually active in the activity, and it's that level of activity in play that means the brain fires up and you get those new learning networks, you get those new neural networks.
Yeah, and that's what we're all about, huh? We got to get those new networks firing so we have all this growth and development. And
and I think you often see in play as well, like, children repeat things over and over and over again, and it's again that repetition within a fun activity that is going to retain that information. They're going to retain that information and they're going to show what they've learned through it. And I think play as well gives children the ability to understand their emotions a little bit more as well. And so when you're thinking about their resilience as an individual over time and their ability to regulate their own emotions and to understand that, play provides them with that safe space in order to explore things that are maybe slightly more challenging in life.
I loved, again, on the Classy lecture, and to everyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, it's a link we can post afterwards for a American sensory integration kind of leader organization. I loved that they said that to try and really reassure parents that, even if you're trying to get them to do a fine motor activity to develop their hand skills in a really playful way, and we think, oh, we're being really playful, even if their fine motor skills don't develop immediately after doing that activity, maybe their creative problem solving developed, maybe their, self-confidence developed, maybe their social skills developed, maybe their, ability to wait developed, or I don't know, I thought it was so lovely to kind of really reassure ourselves as therapists or as parents that, there's all these lovely other things that might happen that we weren't planning on when a child is engaging in play. And I thought that was a really kind of goal.
Yeah. And I think as well, at the preschool that I was working at, children choose what they want to learn and develop at any one point in time, and it's what's most important to them. So it might be for 6 weeks, you know, you want to work on communication, but actually this child wants to be walking. Yeah. And so you have to follow their lead for 6 weeks. Every play activity is about pulling to stand, cruising along furniture, transitioning between activities. And they're so, when you see that internal drive for them to learn a skill, they learn it, and you kind of have to wait for that to happen. And of course, communication is happening at the same time, and you're still exposing them to those opportunities. But after they've got that skill that they're driven to do, they move on to the next one. And Louisa, I'm sure you'll have more experience of this, but this is typical of typical child development as well. They are determined to do one thing, and they will keep persisting with it until they achieve that.
Yeah, I think it's I always use examples from, I have a toddler, and I always use examples from him when I'm mentoring the therapists that are doing the sensory integration training now. And I always think about, you know, when they like want to play peekaboo or read the same book, like, you know, like 100 times, and you think, are we still doing this? But that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that magic where they're like, no, I really want to like check it out. Like, do you still reappear if you're behind the sofa? And do you still reappear if you're in the next room? And do you still, you know, it's like, it's so interesting to see. And when we see that in a sensory integration therapy session, you know, it's like, that's when we know, like, okay, we're in the zone. And then we think, okay, we're in the zone. Like, how can we like up the challenge a little bit? But it's so lovely when you see those. And I think a lot of times, you know, as parents, you're kind of like, are we reading this book again? It's like, no, he's so enthralled by this book. This is when we've got him. Like, this is when all this other learning can happen. And yeah, I do think it's really, just like a really important point to kind of look out for those things that children are driven to do, and really trying to support them in that. And that's kind of the point of being child-led, isn't it? It's like, what are they driven to do? Okay, let's see how we can incorporate challenges in that activity, and then you get the magic.
And the more they're driven to do it, the more they're going to retain it, and you'll see true learning. It's, you know, it's not about doing something to please someone else. It's about doing something to please themselves. And I think lifelong, having that type of drive and motivation and resilience, and quite often these children set themselves little challenges to move a little bit further, and it's that really creates lifelong learning, and why early play is so important.
Oh, it's so lovely to hear. I love that. It's poetic. I'm glad we're recording.
I think this is this is a good time to say as well that like play is developmental, like every other skill. So there's been lots of research that shows what you expect a child's play to look like when they're 6 months old, when they're a year, when they're 2, 3, 4 years old. And it changes over time. And we do expect as therapists, as a speech and language therapist, when I'm assessing, I will ask about play and I will observe play. And Louisa and I, we will watch videos of play at home in different settings, different types of play, to really understand where the child is at and their level of development. And play also indicates, it's indicative of what a child's understanding of their current world is. So very little babies, their world is right in front of their face, but actually by 2 years, their world should be extending, and therefore their understanding and use of language develops in relation to that. And then obviously, as they get older at 4 and 5, and they start to separate from mom and, you know, develop friendships and things, their social communication really starts to develop, and it's all related to play in those experiences. So have a look. I would say have a look at your child's play, have a look at children's play, and think about what they're doing and where you might expect them to be. There's a really useful website called pathways.org, which can help you to see and think about your child's development in terms of where they should be within an age expectation. And that can be a really useful tool just to think about what should they be doing. And yeah, are they developing their play as we might expect for a child of that age?
Yeah, pathways is great. And like we were saying, we talked about this earlier, I think really important for parents, yeah, if they do have any concerns about their child's play, or they do feel like they're playing in a different way than other children their age, or, you know, it is really important to flag that up at GP appointments or health visitor appointments, or, you know, if you have contact with therapist already. You know, sometimes I think play isn't the forefront of a therapist's mind, which is such a shame, because like we're saying, it's how children are developing all these other skills we're looking at. But you know, do flag that up with other professionals if you're concerned, because, you know, it needs to be noted that there's developmental delays within play skills, because we know it impacts on the development of everything else. So
yeah, and children who do go on to receive kind of diagnoses of sensory processing disorder or autism or developmental delays, or who experience kind of literacy challenges when they start school, often show different patterns of really early play. And so, yeah, understanding kind of developmental play, and I suppose intervening early and requesting support early is really beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. Good, very good point. And certainly, yeah, there's just like a million studies, aren't they, you know, about coping strategies of teenagers being related to play skills, and, you know, development of so many different things being related to play skills. So it's really something we should all kind of have our eyes on, besides the fact it's just like joyful and lovely and a child's right to enjoy their life and play. So so should we talk a little bit about the link between sensory integration and play? Should we go on to that next?
Yeah. So I suppose playfully interacting with our environment allows us to use all of our senses, and it relies on all of our sensory systems. And I know, Louisa, you've done a talk about an introduction to sensory integration before, so we're talking about more than just sight, touch, taste, hearing. You know, we're talking about motion and our ability to understand that, and we're talking about movement and our muscle stretch and body awareness and knowing where we are in space. And in order to do all that, I think in order to interpret the environment accurately, we need all of our senses to be working together and to be integrating information. And so, for example, if we're thinking about maintaining posture to play, that requires a lot of sensory involvement. To be able to pass a toy from one hand to another, we need to know where our body is in space, where our hands are, where the object is, you know, to be able to grasp, to be able to reach. And then you also have kind of using your vision to be able to track moving objects. You need to be able to turn to something that's interesting or significant in the environment. You need to know it's there. And then you have the, you know, kind of the coordination of skills, and like running after a ball to kick it, catching a ball. All of this requires such a range, such a multi-sensory range of skills, that with challenges in sensory integration, you're going to see challenges in play, because it's about how much we take from the environment and how we use that information to participate and play as we want to. You're kind of also thinking about, you know, the children that might slam down a toy or use too much force, or not be able to use enough force to play with a toy and things like that. And yeah, every sensory system is involved in play.
I always feel too that, you know, play ramps up so quickly, you know, as soon as they go to school, all of a sudden every child should be able to, you know, use a skipping rope and play ball games, and, you know, all of a sudden the equipment gets really advanced really quickly. And so for the children that, you know, kind of were a bit delayed during their kind of toddler years in preschool, you know, then all of a sudden they go to normal school, and then all of a sudden they're kind of shut out of a lot of play because, you know, there's like scary balls coming at them, they don't know how to do them, and they're feeling really, you know, unconfident about things. So I think it's kind of one of those, yeah, really important skills that then relates to, you know, social communication and developing friendships and developing confidence. And, you know, we really want to kind of help those kids early, so they're not then always dreading playtime in PE and, you know, never wanting to do anything besides kind of stay home or be on screens. Or you know, we really want to support children to have a variety of opportunities in their lives. And yeah, anyway, it's another tangent we can go on later. So
yeah, and you know, yeah I was about to lead on to our next kind of discussion point, but go for it.
no I was going to do that now too, so yeah.
So, you know, linking back to that importance of sensory integration and play comes in language, because if you're not taking part in an experience, if you're not engaging in something that's wet or messy or slimy or sticky or cold or hot, or yucky even, you're not going to have the opportunity to attach that language to the meaningful experience. And so this is where kind of speech and language development comes in with sensory integration and play, is that without children seeking out those opportunities in their environment to explore and to think about if something's hard, if something is soft, you know, you're not going to have those opportunities to learn that conceptual language development. And similarly, with learning other concepts like in, out, under, and learning your verbs like jump, run, hop, roll, if children aren't experiencing those or aren't accurately understanding those experiences that their body is doing because of underlying sensory integration problems, they're going to have more difficulty developing that language. So, for example, in speech and language therapy, we don't develop language by showing children flashcards of jump and repeating the word. We want to be...
Why not? That sounds so interesting.
Yeah, that sounds fun, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We want to be jumping off everything, jumping into everything together. And I think it's doing it together in a fun, meaningful activity within context that children have that opportunity to attach the language to the experience. And that's where the sensory integration, play, speech and language therapy development really comes together. And yeah, where you can see differences there.
It's so amazing too, because from, you know, an OT perspective, when I'm doing sensory integration therapy sessions, I always see these lovely improvements in speech, and I'm kind of like, I don't know why this is happening, but I love it, and I'm not really measuring it, but I'm overjoyed. And yeah, it's just so lovely to kind of hear a bit more about the background. And it's just such a valuable tool. Yeah,
it's because you've opened them up to an experience. Their ability to integrate all of that sensory information has come together for them, and they're like, oh, roll, that's what we mean by roll. You know, before it didn't feel like anything, but now it's, you know, now it's something, and I'm having fun, and I'll remember it because it's firing up my brain.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it again.
Yeah. And
because
again.
it was enjoyable.
Oh, that's
yeah, and again, and again, and again.
Yeah.
And I think it's coming back to you, Louisa, like often as therapists, as teachers, and I'm sure as parents, like you feel like you have to keep ahead. You have to keep introducing the next thing. You have to keep thinking about what skill are they going to learn next? What skill do they have to learn next? But actually, you know, you need to do it again and again and again. And I think teachers, parents, therapists get bored long before a child does.
Yeah. I remember it was quite a hard lesson to learn when we first qualified, you know, that just you could do a really similar session every time and set up the room in the same way, and you'd see these like amazing improvements just to like give them, you know, the same type of experience, but then just upping the challenge that little bit every time. Yeah, because for us, you're like, this is boring. I'm not doing my job. I'm not like making a new change every day and designing a whole new session. And, you know, but actually, you know, going to the same park with a child every day and just thinking about like a tiny little change. But yeah, just having the kind of main structure the same is actually, you know, children crave that structure. They want to kind of know where they are in order to then challenge themselves in other ways. And yeah, it is, I think it is a hard lesson for adults to learn.
Yeah. And like you said, to know that it's okay, to know that that's what that child needs, and that is why they are doing that. Which is really important.
Benjamin, my little boy, was a little bit delayed with his vestibular, so he wasn't kind of climbing as early as some of the other kids. And I kept, you know, I'm like, he's in like full therapy all day every day with me because I'm like aware of this. And then I remember kind of going back and reading one of Jean Eyre's, the founder of Sensory Integration, one of her old textbooks, and I was kind of like just looking for inspiration, and she said, you know, the children get to that point where they're just driven to challenge gravity. And I thought, oh, he's not there. Like, when is he going to be driven to challenge? You know, he'll kind of do it with like enough coaxing and like, and then it's funny because all of a sudden, like recently, like he runs up to a tree and he's like, "Mama, climb!" You know, and it's like, and he's like, you know, this far off the ground, he's just like going like, "Climb the tree!" And I'm like, oh, he's ready. He's ready to challenge gravity. And yeah, it's such a beautiful moment where you're like, I get it. I see it. He's telling me like, I don't need to have all these, you know, fancy climbing equipment and full therapy programs for him. I just kind of, you know, do the step before and take my own advice that I give to everyone else, and then wait for him to like be ready to challenge gravity. Like, but yeah, it's definitely hard to take your own advice as a parent.
And is he using those words, Louisa? Is he using?
Yeah, he says, "I want to climb the tree." Is
he using climb?
Yeah, he says, "I want to climb the tree."
Yeah,
but you know, like it's a tree that's
amazing,
like,
and that's
up.
because
it's like. And he just stands there like holding it, going like, ah, like beam me up. You know, I'm like, let's try this like tree over here, or you know.
Yeah, the little stump. Let's try the tree stump.
And I'm like, yeah, well, let's like, I like run over and jump on the tree stump and do the same thing. I'm like, and he's like, no, this one. I want to go straight up.
Yeah, and it's that, you know, it's meaningful to him now. He's got that like drive. And climb is a word that he wants to do, and he's communicating that to you because your mum, you're gonna climb up that tree with him, right?
And I'm like, I don't really want to climb that tree. Like, Dad, where's your dad?
And that's just like that's a great example of the kid being ready, the child being ready to do those things as well.
Yeah, and obviously sometimes it's not quite so obvious. You know, sometimes they don't run up to the tree and put their arms up and say, "Mama, help, I want to climb up the tree," obviously. But, you know, we can still look at those, you know, sometimes it's really, you know, minor things. Sometimes it's like looking at what the child keeps looking at, or, you know, sometimes it's following their lead in a really much more kind of subtle way. And I think that is more challenging because, again, it's just being more patient and really, you know, looking at those cues and in a more kind of subtle way. But yeah, the cues they're always there. I think, you know, it's whether we're patient enough to really look for them and notice them,
understand them. I think this is probably quite a good time to talk about the link between the vestibular system and speech and language development. So vestibular system is about balance and motion, and it helps us to maintain posture, it helps us to move against gravity, it helps us to understand where we are in relation to our environment. And because of this and its interactions with other sensory systems, it's really important on the development of motor movements and motor planning. And obviously, when we think about speech, we need a lot of motor planning to make that happen, to make all the speech sounds that we make, because we need our lips, we need our tongue, we need our jaw to be able to coordinate all of that movement at the right time in order to make the sounds that we want and to be able to put them into words. So it's really complex. But that's where the vestibular system influences speech and language development. It also influences, when we're thinking about posture, we need the vestibular system to help us to maintain an upright posture, so we're not leaning. We can sit safely and confidently in a chair. We can sit cross-legged on the floor, because it's then that we can use two hands to interact with our environment. And it also impacts upon our diaphragm and how much air we can get into our lungs, which is obviously needed to make the speech sounds. So if our posture isn't great, we're maybe not able to get quite as much air into our lungs, and therefore it's more difficult to speak. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything there, Louisa, about
so interesting. I feel
planning.
like now I want to be a speech therapist too. I do remember just thinking about the breath control, because I hadn't thought about it in that way related to speech sounds before. But I remember I had one little boy that I saw, and he had this like really like tiny little voice when we started therapy sessions. And by the end, you know, he was like really like boldly like being like, you know, swing, you know, and I remember kind of asking, because it was when we were doing our training, asking our mentor, the amazing Gretchen Reeves, about that. And she was saying that it's a sign that their motor planning is developing in order to regulate their breath control, in order to, you know, kind of motor plan to take a breath in order to like project a big sound. But I hadn't thought about it in terms of postural control with the diaphragm in that way as well, as far as related to speech. So it's really interesting. And then remember last week when we were doing that joint assessment, we were talking about auditory localization. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? I thought that was an interesting point for parents to be aware of.
So yeah, definitely. The vestibular system is really closely linked to the auditory system, so our ability to hear. And the reason why it's linked is because we need the vestibular system. If we hear something behind us, our vestibular system and our auditory system work together so that we can turn our head in order to locate the sound. And that's obviously really important for children's development of attention and listening, which is also a really significant speech and language thing that we look at, is their ability to attend to salient information, so important information in the environment. And children develop over time that it's really important to listen to and attend to speech sounds. So if someone's talking or someone calls their name, we want children to turn. And that's an indication of that auditory and vestibular system working together. So it helps us to know where speech is coming from. It helps us to orientate within our environment, to know that if someone goes, if someone's in the classroom and they're playing over there and there's a big splash sound and you see water spray everywhere, it's a child's ability to kind of attend to that, and they recognize that experience and what it means. If they hear a loud noise, if they've got good, a good vestibular system, then they're going to be able to identify that noise and know whether it's something to be worried about. So, for example, if the fire alarm goes off, it's a horrible noise because it needs us to respond and react. But if you're using the Hoover and your child's responding in a really scared way, then, it's not something that needs to be reacted to in that way. It's a loud noise, but you should be able to turn to it, see that it's a Hoover, it's used for cleaning, and kind of that understanding of experiences from an auditory point of view.
I think it's
does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and is like a really nice description. The only thing I was gonna say in addition to that was, Yeah, I think it can be quite an unsafe way to live too, from a kind of emotional perspective. You know, if you don't know where sounds are coming from kind of continuously, you know, so we may see some children that never want to be in busy environments, or, you know, on the playground, or, you know, with lots of other people, because, you know, if you're constantly like kind of don't know where sounds are coming from, you know, it is a very unsafe way to live, and makes you kind of be on kind of high alert all the time. And so, yeah, just from an emotional point of view, your kind of central nervous systems are always under that kind of fight or flight, not knowing if something's about to like attack you. And then of course, then if you have these motor delays where you're not able to navigate to moving obstacles quickly and respond, and you kind of know that inherently, then of course you're not going to know if you're going to be able to move out of a way of a ball that's being thrown at you, or a car that's coming, or a child that's going to run into you. And so, yeah, it just kind of compounds all that anxiety, and just, yeah, it's a very unsafe and stressful way to live.
Yeah. And I think you also find as well, during like those fight and flight responses, the auditory system can shut down. So when you're under high stress, you completely stop hearing things. And therefore you're not going to be processing language. If a teacher comes up to you and says, "Are you okay? What's wrong? Tell me what's happened," then children aren't going to be hearing that. They're not going to be able to use their language in order to communicate. You know, if you think about a time when you've been angry and upset, you often don't hear the other side of the argument because you're so enraged, and then you often can't communicate your point clearly enough either. And so that's really important, like often to support children who are having these difficulties. And most of them do have those underlying sensory integration challenges where, yeah, like Louisa said, they're in fight and flight. Their main priority isn't about hearing language. Their main priority is staying safe and secure in an upright position, maintaining their balance, looking out for dangers, looking out for obstacles in their environment. And during times of distress, I would always recommend having, even for a child who's communicating using language, having a set of visuals to allow a child to communicate more easily, because having the visual language is more concrete, that it helps children during those kind of scary moments and those fight and flight responses. So yeah. And I think, again, like, it's another thing for any teachers out there who are finding a child to be particularly challenging, and actually looking under the layers, and understanding what is happening.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good advice. And I was burst out laughing because I was thinking about an argument I had with my husband the other night. I was like, oh yes, I couldn't hear what he was saying because I was, but I think we've all had that experience. But yeah, I think so often I have to just really reassure parents too, you know, when they say, oh, my child had a meltdown in the supermarket, like, what should I have done? And I was like, you know, in a lot of times we should just do less, you know, a lot of times we should just like be quieter. And, you know, I'm always saying, just like, let's reduce language, let's, you know, lower our, you know, flailing arms, let's, you know, like lower our tone of voice, like, you know, like sometimes it is just really about doing less or asking less, or, you know, I mean, I think the number of times I've had to kind of explain to very well-meaning, well-qualified teachers that, you know, it's probably not helpful for a child with language delay to say, like, why do you think that you did that? You know, these kind of rhetorical questions when they're very, very upset. You know, it's, you know, just, we could do less. We could just be quiet for a minute.
Exactly. And it's kind of, you know, having that open position, I find quite useful with any child across kind of their level of development, is getting down onto their level, having, you know, kind of arms and palms up, arms out, so that you're ready to provide children with the support that they need. Because some children, when they're upset as well, they don't want to be hugged or swaddled or held really tight. And like you said, you know, giving them that space to make that decision and come to you when they're ready is is really important.
Yeah. Or yeah, like you're saying, having a visual where it's like, you know, if they're going to hurt someone else, a visual of like one thing that they should do. And it's very clear, you know, sit down, or, you know, like something.
And offering like, you know, I'm here.
Yeah.
Is quite, you know, useful language to say, rather than, like you said, don't challenge the problem in the moment during times of distress or upset or frustration, because it's not going to be processed. The language is far too complex, and in those situations we're asking a child to understand their emotions, understand others' emotions, and understand what effect they've had, and why they've done it. It's far too complex in a time of distress, and the language system just doesn't work. It doesn't work for adults.
Yeah.
So it's not going to work for children who are having problems. I helped a family out recently who said, you know, their child was having a really hard time at school, and the description of the child at school was very different from home. And there had been an incident where he had been working on the carpet, and they had to write something while they were sat on the carpet, and this child got upset. I think he threw a pencil pot or something, maybe threw some sand. The teacher approached, said, "What's wrong?" And he hit out at the teacher because he was so frustrated and so upset. Supported the parents to think about and to talk with the school about, you know, what was it about that situation. He's finding reading hard, but, you know, he's very particular. He likes his writing to be neat. And I was like, well, sitting on a carpet, cross-legged, with your friends around trying to write, that's really difficult. Your writing isn't going to be neat. And this was something that he was worried about. You know, what else has gone on? Is it that there's an underlying literacy problem? And again, he's finding that stressful in those busy situations, and it's just too much to process. So after going through all of this, trying to break down all these reasons, sharing lots of information about sensory integration, he needed glasses. And so he wasn't a child that needed to be out of the classroom in one-to-one and small group work. He needed glasses, and then everything fell into place. He was able to see. And so it's you know, that kind of frustration, those outbursts of behavior that you might see, that you might think, oh, it's a naughty child. Look in more detail and explore it more before making those judgments, because if you take away vision and you're in a busy environment, and it's going to be horrible. And he didn't say that.
Did he have? So he had underlying speech delays. So he didn't recognize. No, he didn't recognize. He just didn't know what good sight looked like because he was young.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. And no sensory delays. His sensory stuff was fine. It was literally just the glasses.
This was just a conversation with the parents. This wasn't a professional role. This was in a friendly role. But I was like, you know, explore underlying things, but vision and corrected by glasses. So definitely
so
look beyond.
For children's behavior is you know, their way of showing us. I always think, just let me see them. I'll tell you, let me see them.
And again, you know, this is a child without language delays, and just the teacher coming up to him saying, tell me what's wrong. Why did you throw those pencils? I'm not having any of this. Move out the way. I need my space, because
because you think
this is not the right time to talk about this.
And then you think a child with language delays, you know, is going to be so much more, you know, all those problems compounded.
Exactly. And there are things that we can use for children after events to help them process and understand experiences, if they're able to, if they're at that level at which they can reflect on things that have happened. But yeah, the key message is don't do it in the moment of frustration or insecurity. Wait until the child is safe and in a regulated space. When they're calm, when they're alert, you can go, oh, so
you can work
this
on
happened. Yeah. And again, using visuals, I would still use visuals at that point because it's too, it's not concrete enough. It's too abstract. Language is really abstract.
Yeah. Oh, well, we should do another talk on this, shouldn't we? That can be our next topic. Got a few lined up now.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite a big one.
Yeah. There's a nice little intro.
And I suppose that, Louisa, you might want to chip in on this, on when we might be concerned about the vestibular system, you know, what children might be doing that shows us that there's a vestibular problem.
Yeah, I think we see just really kind of atypical responses to movement, don't we? We see children that don't want to move a lot or want to move all the time. And I always tell parents, you know, to kind of look at, you know, they're the kids that kind of want to move their head a lot. You know, do they want to be upside down? Do they want to be spinning in circles? Do they want to nod their head a lot? Do they want to be on the swing a lot? Or, you know, inversely, are they, you know, so, you know, with little babies, you see them, they don't want to lay down, you know, on the changing table because they don't even want that backward movement, or they don't want to tilt their head back to have their hair washed, or, you know, even like with drinking, you know, they don't want to tilt their head back to drink, or, you know, we see those just kind of atypical responses to head movement. So, and yeah, lots of other things, you know, like ability to track moving objects with their vision, you know, poor posture. You know, a lot of times we see anxiety, stress responses and things. But yeah, I think the vestibular one is just such an important system, especially, yeah, just it's so interesting to hear about how it affects speech and language as well. So I'm just aware of our time. Should we do a few kind of like top tips on how to use a child's sensory preferences and play to support some speech and language development, so people have a little takeaway?
Yeah.
On that.
So I would say that people games are the most important thing, and people games will involve two or more people, and they're great for including a child's sensory preferences. So by sensory preferences, we mean the sensory experiences that children enjoy. So not the things that they find challenging, the things that they enjoy, the things that they seek, and turning those into playful interactions. And it's about it being a playful interaction between two people that provides the opportunity for learning language and for developing interaction skills. And yeah, it's the playfulness of the interaction that's the most important. So as an educator, as a parent, as a therapist, be as fun as possible, join them in their game. And I suppose some examples of people games might be, you know, very early on, peekaboo, for example, is a good people game. Hide and seek is a good people game. Someone's hiding is a good people game. And for children who seek and it's about adapting these games. So children that seek lots of deep pressure, they like lots of big squeezes, they like really rough and tumble play. Don't play hide and seek with light, tickly scarves or anything. Play it with like heavier fabrics or sofa cushions or something that's going to give them that body feedback that they want. If they really like vestibular movement, or I suppose, you know, if they don't like being squeezed or something, then use those tickly scarves that provide like lighter touch. And I think just being creative about what you're offering and how you're offering it. If they really like vestibular movement, so if they really like swinging and rocking back and forth and things, then it might be that you're still singing songs like Row the Boat, but sit in front of them, take their hands and rock back and forth and vary the speed. You know, you can do the side to side movement as well. So you're giving them that vestibular that enjoy, that they like, and you're putting songs onto it. And then you can also pause, you know, and wait for them to fill in the gaps. Or maybe you climb into a cardboard box and you push them around the room, and if there's another sibling, get them to climb into, you know, and create dodgems so that you crash into each other as well, so you're getting a bit of a full body experience. But I suppose people games providing the opportunity for routine, for predictability, for repetition of language, within the context of a fun activity.
Yeah, and
but
I think
it will
that importance about full body, you know, really trying to, I quite often am trying to kind of reinforce this point of like, you know, how can we get there? You know, can they be rolling down a hill, or, you know, can they be, squeezing under a sofa cushion, or, you know, how can we get all that touch happening all over their body, however, in whatever way they can tolerate it. But I think, that emphasis of movement and full body input, you know, that really gets all those sensory systems firing.
Yeah. And because of that link with the vestibular system and language development, if we can get in some vestibular movement, well, any movement will stimulate that vestibular system, then you're going to increase that opportunity for learning language. And it's really about, you know, using that playful interaction, and you are doing it with them too. So you're sitting down, or you're swinging, or you take a turn to hide under the sofa cushions, because you're modeling as well. You're showing them what to do. You're not demanding, so don't ask any questions. Comment, don't test, I think is a big thing. So people games, playfulness isn't about testing a child's knowledge of what color is this, what animal is this, what sound does the animal make. And I think that's a really easy pattern to fall into in play. But just use language that's relevant to the moment and the experience. And pause. So when you're singing Row the Boat, and the crocodile's about to come and snap you up, you know, wait, pause, see if the child does anything to communicate or to show anticipation of this crocodile coming, and then add in that language. Here he comes, or here's the crocodile, snap, 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 anything like that. And over time, through repetition, through predictability of the game, children will start to learn the language and attach it to its meaning. Similarly with things like chasing games, you know, crouch really low, wait, go ready, steady, and then wait for the child to communicate in any way. They might not use their words, they might just look at you and smile, they might look at you and stand up, and it's at that point that you say go and model that language. But pausing allows a child to fill in, but then also allows you to model. And it's about balancing, you know, when is the right time to add that language and when's not.
That's why everybody needs a speech therapist. But yeah, I think we were talking about too earlier, I think a lot of times, I mean, I get this question from other therapists that I'm mentoring, but, you know, I think teachers probably have the same experience, and parents, that, you know, sometimes we do work, I know I work with a lot of them, kind of older children that, you know, people think, well, they don't want to play, they're not playful, they're not interested in this. But a lot of times it is, you know, going back and really, Pathways does a great job of those, they've kind of broken down the play development. And so trying to figure out really where the child is in their play development. And then, you know, sometimes I work with a lot of older children that they're still at the stage that peekaboo is actually, or hide and seek is an appropriate game. You know, maybe we can play it in a slightly, you know, more advanced way, but sometimes not. You know, sometimes it is still just looking at those really kind of you know, games we associate with younger children, but they are appropriate for older children if their play development is delayed. And so I think, don't be afraid to, or not saying to you obviously, but to everyone watching this, you know, don't be afraid to kind of go a bit lower level than you think is age appropriate, because it needs to be the right developmental challenge for the child. And so yeah, and another thing about kind of, because I'm aware we both work with early years and kind of younger children, so but just to kind of reassure parents that have older children, you know, I always think about that video that Gretchen showed us and about play and in our training together. I don't know if you remember, and she showed loads of different animals playing and loads of like adults playing that kind of remind me of, you know, kind of team building away days at work. But you know, adults can be really playful. Lots of things we do at the gym, lots of things we do in exercise classes, you know, Zumba's playful, you know, lots of things adults do are really playful. And so for older children, we can look at those kinds of activities and then just try to figure out a way to make them, you know, a bit easier from either a language point of view or a sensory motor point of view. That, you know, you can do lots of really interesting things with slower moving, like balls or balloons or bubbles or beach balls, or, you know, you can play really similar games that kind of older children or adults would play, but just things are moving a bit slower. So yeah, I think just not being dismissive if you have an older child of some of these suggestions, because yeah, they can be really appropriate for older children as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and following the child's lead. Start where they're at, start where they're interested in, and you can offer them a new idea. So you can offer them a change of speed, or you can offer them a new rule for the game or something, and just be prepared. If they say no, don't take offense. And just go back to the game that they're playing. But they might go, oh, that's a good idea, I'm gonna try it this way.
Or they might try it that way tomorrow.
Yeah, or I might try it that way tomorrow. Exactly. So, you know, do feel free to offer a new idea, even though you're following their lead and their idea. Offer something different in between and see if they take it or not. I think but again, remember that play is about joy, and it's about spontaneous, and it's about just like true enjoyment. So if you suggest anything and the child goes, oh, you know, honor that choice and don't persist.
Yeah, I think that what you said previously too about, you know, in sensory integration therapy, we're always doing this, but you know, I'm sure in with speech and when I work from an OT perspective, so you know, it's always really important to start where the child is. You know, it's like we always look at, I think it's very easy to be like, but we want them to be able to do this, and it's like no, we're always starting where the child is. Always look at where the child is, and then we start from there. And sometimes we start like, you know, a level below if we're trying to kind of make up some things that maybe they've missed somewhere along the way, and then we can ramp things up and add those new challenges. But yeah, I think that's a really, really important point to reinforce.
The
other thing I just realized we didn't say was about that other point that we talked about earlier that we liked from the classy lecture. We keep, maybe you guys should just watch that lecture instead. Actually. Yeah. We just loved it, and I watched it twice. But you know, they said when we're thinking about how to support older children in playing, that you know, there's so many different interests, especially when children get older, that we should just look to their, you know, ask the parents to look to their peers, like what are their peers interested in? Are they interested in sports? Are they interested in music? Are they interested in video games? Are they interested in, you know, Duke of Edinburgh awards? Or, you know, just look at what their peers are doing and then try to find a way to support them, rather than as therapists or teachers or parents trying to kind of come up with innovative ways to help them, you know, learn in playful ways. Just look at what they want to be doing. It's like, oh, that's easier. It's going to be more meaningful. And you know, I mean, sometimes. And
No, carry on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, like the most important thing about play isn't about the toys. It's not about the equipment you have. It's about you and your interaction with the child. And that's when we really, that's when you can kind of really help them. It really helps to build that relationship. And it's about you as a mom, as a dad, as a teacher, as a therapist, whatever.
Yeah, we need to have as much fun as possible, because then they'll be having fun. I really notice it with Benjamin. You know, I notice the times when I really like, you know, lay down on a blanket in the grass in the garden or something, and I'm like roaring with laughter, and we're having, you know, it's like those are the times that I can tell he really is able to do things in a much more kind of involved. And you know, I think I was really into the play that time, you know. So yeah, I think it's very good advice. Cool.
Yeah. And like waiting as well, not feeling too much stress, like wait at times. It's okay to wait. And even if you're thinking about speech and language development and communication, it's okay to wait, and it's okay not to use any language. Because like I mentioned before, speech and language is also really about reading facial expressions and body gesture and things. So even like you said, you know, you lie down next to Benjamin, you can look at him, you can smile, you can frown, and things like that. And that might be enough to initiate that, like, oh, let's play, and we'll do this fun. And it might be that you're just rolling around on the floor, and it can be anything. Play can be absolutely anything, but the playfulness of your interaction is really important when you're thinking about modeling language and communication and things like that.
Oh, that's a lovely takeaway point for us. I can hear Benjamin now actually saying, I want to go in there with Mama. So I should sign off now. He wants to come play now. Yeah, this has been brilliant, Lara. It's like, I feel, very inspired and informed, even though I kind of, you know, you never know what's going to come out of these kind of talks. So yeah, I feel like this was just super interesting, exceeded all my expectations. Thank you so much for doing it with me.
Good. No, it's been a pleasure. Nice to have the opportunity to talk about things that maybe we do in secret, I suppose.
Like, I don't ever say this out loud. I just like integrate this
and to actually share exactly. So actually sharing out loud makes you realize, exactly what you do, why you do, and why it's so important for other people to know that.
I definitely, you have a vast knowledge. And just a message to everyone too. Lara and I are doing joint assessments. So if you want a really lovely holistic assessment of your child, if you have any concerns about their sensory motor participation, or their communication, or their ability to participate in their daily activities, or their play, do please get in touch. We're doing them remotely at the moment, and hopefully, we should just carry on doing them remotely if we need to, because it's a nice way to be able to work with people that don't live near us. So do get in touch if you want us to do an assessment.
And it's a great way to work inside children's homes, because actually the work that we do is about the all day, every day. It's not about once a week. It's about the all day, every day. So I think that's key.
Yeah, that's how we build new
play pathways. Is all day, every day.
We got to do it every day, all the time, not just in a therapy session. That's why it's lovely to work with parents. Okay, well, thanks very much for coming and joining me, Lara, and thanks everyone for listening, and look out for more videos in the future. Let us know if there's anything we talked about today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much. And for everyone listening, if there's anything we talked about you'd like to hear more of, or have any questions, then let us know. Thanks. See you later. Bye.
Bye.